Mom gives birth on the front lawn, and the delivery is caught on a doorbell camera. When Emily Johnson began to feel contractions during her second pregnancy, she remained remarkably calm. After all, she'd been through the whole birthing process before. She was an old pro. In her mind, time was very much on her side, until suddenly it wasn't. As Emily quickly learned, this birth was said to be far less conventional than her first delivery, and that's putting it mildly. While we've heard all about dramatic deliveries before, this one really took the cake. For Emily and her partner Michael Johnson, though, getting to the actual delivery stage was a challenge in itself. You see, after the Vacaville, California residents welcomed their first child Blake into the world, they had eyes on growing their family even further. Yet as the couple soon found out, that was easier said than done. The mom revealed,
So we had been wanting to get pregnant again for about 6 months before we ended up getting pregnant.
That must have been a stressful period for the excited parents. Once Emily and Michael discovered that they were gonna have a second kid, the couple began to look forward to the birth. Emily said,
We were anticipating getting the epidural done and just doing the normal birth plan at the hospital.
Also, if you have not done so already, please subscribe to our channel and click that notification bell to get inspired by these real-life stories every day. Now, back to the story. But as you can probably guess, normal isn't the right word to describe what eventually happened. And Emily's first pregnancy may well have fueled her decision to set an epidural. She went through a particularly grueling labor that lasted about 18 hours before Blake finally arrived. We can only imagine how tough that was for the mom to be. So, keeping all that in mind, let's jump ahead to November 4th, 2021. By that stage, everything appeared to be going to plan. Emily only had a few days to wait until the big moment, and the anticipation must have been palpable. Yet her excitement quickly turned to surprise and shock when the evening drew in. Why is that? Simple. The contractions kicked off. With a literal jolt, Emily realized that her baby was ready to see the world. The problem was the baby was looking to arrive a bit earlier than anyone had planned. We can only imagine what was going through Emily's head when the contraction pain began. Even so, Emily didn't panic. This is impressive considering how most expectant parents would have panicked at that point. Still, Emily and Michael kept their heads, and believe it or not, that was all down to their previous experience with Blake a few years before. Though it had been a tough birth for Emily, she had one thing on her side. You see, during that marathon labor, Emily's contractions were fairly spaced out, and in the latest instance, she noticed a familiar pattern. The expectant mom said,
Every 10 minutes or so for about 2.5, 3 hours. So we were like, oh, we've got plenty of time.
On that note, Emily and Michael played the waiting game at their house. It goes without saying that patience was key here, but as any seasoned parents would tell you, the hospital isn't anyone's favorite place to be, especially when you're in the early stages of labor. So Emily and Michael put it off, even as the contractions got closer and closer together. Despite their waiting game, neither of them could have predicted what transpired when the clock passed 9 p.m. in Vacaville. It was as if someone flipped a switch. Before the parents knew it, it was time to spring into action and fast. Emily recalled,
I was really eager to be done. I was hoping it was going to come early, but we never really knew.
All in a matter of about 20 to 30 minutes, and we're like, oh, we've got to get in the car, we've got to go. Ahead of that, though, they needed to do a couple of other important things. Firstly, Michael and Emily contacted the latter's mother. She'd look after Blake while his parents headed to the hospital. Then the couple got in touch with their local hospital to confirm they were coming in. Luckily, it was just a 5-minute drive from their house. So even though it was a few days earlier than expected, Emily and Michael still seemed well prepared for the labor. They were also reassured by how close they were to the hospital. But as Emily's pain increased, they knew the time for dawdling was over. They grabbed their belongings and headed out to the car. But just when everything seemed to be going according to schedule, Emily froze. All their plans were quickly thrown out the window once the mom reached the end of the driveway. She suddenly came to a rather sobering realization. As Emily told KCRA News,
Got to the car, stood at the car, and just said, no, I can't get into this car.
Yep, the contractions were so frequent by that stage that she couldn't bear the thought of sitting in a moving vehicle, let alone climb into the seat. In a matter of moments, the couple had to improvise. Knowing that they couldn't get to the hospital in time, Emily and Michael accepted that a home birth was their only option now. It's crazy how quickly things can change in an instant. But what would that mean for the delivery? Emily's previous birth in the hospital was difficult enough. A home birth was almost unthinkable. As a whole, home births aren't as frequent as you might expect in America. They only account for roughly 1.5% of all deliveries across the country. Emily was on track to join a very exclusive club, one she never imagined being a part of. That didn't mean she was in for a traumatizing labor, though. Although the number of home births are low in the US, there are plenty of benefits to this method. For instance, an expectant mom might find her home's familiar surroundings to be more relaxing than that of a hospital room. Some health experts also claim that mothers could have more control over the birth if it happens at home. You see, in a hospital delivery room, ladies don't have much of a choice when it comes to picking their labor position. If they're giving birth at home, though, they can settle for whatever posture makes them comfortable. We wonder if Emily thought about any of that as she stood outside the car. Plus, home deliveries allow for more people to be around the mom too, whether they're relatives or close pals. Then again, for all the pros that this method has, we can't forget about the hazards either. Yep, women in Emily's position have to contend with two dangers in particular. The first, some health experts say, is that the baby has a greater risk of death. As per the site, for every 1,000 home deliveries, between 1 and 2 of the youngsters won't survive. It's a startling statistic, and the concerns don't end there. Brain damage is another big worry as well. Using the same base number as before, WebMD claims that 0.4 to 0.6 of those babies will suffer complications with their brains. That might sound low at first, but consider that this is 3 times higher than the figures posted at medical facilities. Did Emily and Michael know these stats? Whether they knew the risks or not, Emily and Michael didn't have much choice in the matter. The baby was coming at home no matter what. Yet, here's where the situation took another unexpected turn. After moving away from the car, Emily realized that she wouldn't even be able to make her way back into the house either. Looking back on that pivotal moment, Emily revealed what she did next. The mom said,
I'm just gonna get on the grass and I'm gonna be here. This is gonna be my spot.
Talk about thinking on the fly. Thankfully, she and Michael were no longer alone at that stage. Yes, Emily's mom had finally arrived. Christy Sparks had made her way over to the house after receiving the call from earlier to look after Blake. But now she was supporting her heavily pregnant daughter instead alongside Michael. Plus, they also had an additional helping hand from afar. As Emily got settled on the grass, Michael called the emergency services for any kind of aid. After all, we've got to remember that no midwives are present like the standard home birth. It was all up to him, Christy, and Emily. Thankfully, though, the person on the other end of the phone eased their burden. Emily told Good Morning America, the dispatcher really helped with the process. She really guided Mike and my mom through as they were trying to keep me as calm as possible because I was having a baby on my lawn. After all, when a home birth turns into a lawn birth, you need all the help you can get. So Michael, Christy, and the emergency services dispatcher all aided Emily as her labor intensified. Imagine catching that sight while driving past their house in Vacaville. It would have been surreal to say the least, but on the stroke of 10:42 p.m., the magical moment finally arrived. With Christy crouching down by her daughter's legs, the baby's head started to emerge. This was it. It was also brilliantly timed. An ambulance had just reached the driveway as well.
Right here. I mean, I'm on my hands and knees, and little head comes out. By the time they walked up to me, I had a baby in my arms crying. It was surreal.
You can say that again, Christy. Births don't come much more dramatic than that, not even in movies. But how was Emily after she welcomed her second son into the world? We can't imagine a more rustic setting than the front lawn to give birth after all.
I just laid back in the grass and just took a nice deep breath and all right, he's here. I can relax. He's fine. But man, do I never want to do this again.
Yet, unsurprisingly, there was no epidural. In fact, she didn't have any painkillers on hand for the delivery. No wonder Emily was hurting. It must have been agony. If this story ended with the birth of her son on the lawn, it'd be quite the tale. But guess what, folks? There's more on the way. Yes, another twist came to light a short while later that left the parents stunned. You see, outside Emily and Michael's house, they have a Ring camera, and incredibly, that bit of kit went on to record the entire event on the grass. How amazing is that? It didn't register with the couple until they arrived at the nearby medical facility with their newborn son. Michael came to the realization first as he told KCRA News. Emily's hubby recalled,
I was like, oh, this is gonna be on the camera. I'm gonna watch this and we can share this.
The footage itself is remarkable, capturing the mom's cries and the sound of their son following his arrival. It didn't take long until Michael made good on the latter part of his statement. Emily said, when Michael got to the hospital, he started looking at the footage and showing it to the nurses. Mind you, for as nice as that was, she raised a humorous point about her positioning in the video. Speaking to KCRA News, Emily said,
it was just pain and discomfort. And I'm just thankful that I was faced in that direction because otherwise I don't think we'd be able to share the video footage with anybody.
We can see her point. It most certainly would have gone under lock and key inside their house if that happened. At the time of writing, the clip has earned close to 78,000 views on YouTube. Speaking of which, that brings us on to Emily and Michael's little boy. As it turns out, his arrival also coincided with a significant period in his family's history. The baby shares a birthday with Michael's granddad Alan, and if that wasn't enough, he arrived a couple of days before Emily's grandparent Thomas too, who turned 82 in November 2021. Keeping that in mind, the youngster was named Thomas Allen Johnson by his proud folks. Emily went on to offer an update on how Thomas was doing during her chat with Good Morning America. She made sure to state that his behavior was nothing like his chaotic arrival. The mom said, "He's a pretty quiet and chill little dude. He just stares and watches the world go by or sleeps." We wonder if Thomas will be equally chill when he eventually finds out about his crazy birth. As for his mother, Emily shared her final thoughts to KCRA News.
I joke that it was like, being a cow giving birth in a field. Because it just...
It's revealing one other thing she won't forget from that wild night in Vacaville. Emily said,
Once we got to the hospital and I went to the bathroom, I had grass clippings just falling off of me and the nurses were wiping dirt off my knees. And I'm like, oh, yeah, I did give birth in the lawn.
If you liked the video, please give it a thumbs up and consider sharing it with someone who may find it interesting. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.